It's the Introvert Dating Success Podcast, the show for introverted men that's all about learning how to attract beautiful women and still get your precious alone time. And now, here's your host, dating coach and fellow introvert, HarryWilmington.
Hey guys, thank you once again for tuning in to the Introvert Dating Success Show, courtesy of introvertdatingsuccess.com. I'm your host, as always, HarryWilmington. This is the show, and that is the website you can go to learn how to date as your authentic introverted self while still getting your precious, sweet, precious alone time. And on today's show, so I kind of mulled over if I wanted to talk about this or not, because I didn't really know what angle I wanted to come at it from. And for the purposes of this show, I always want to be able to talk about things as it pertains to dating as an introvert. So with that said, we're going to be talking about the lessons that you as an introvert can learn from Jada Smith and Will Smith's entanglement situation. And just before I get into that, if you want to hear more of these shows, if you want to see the show live, first of all, you can check us out at protestparty.tv. I stream there. This show comes on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we're here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. While you're here, be sure to subscribe. If you like what you're hearing, you can donate. You can leave a tip. You can buy some merchandise, like all that good stuff. But anyway, so this has really been a story that's been in the news, and I'm a entertainment junkie. I follow all entertainment stuff. I follow like your entertainment weeklies, your MTVs and whatnot. And so when incidents in the public arise that involve celebrities and relationships, because they are the people that we typically see the most, I think that you can learn certain lessons from seeing how these relationships build and also how these relationships end up falling. And a lot of the times, these relationships fall for a number of reasons, whether it was an imperfect partnership, whether it was not paying attention to the other person. But as it pertains to introverts in particular, a lot of stuff can stem simply from not being able to ask for what you want, not recognizing certain things, and honestly not fighting for the amount of alone time that you actually need in a relationship. So we're going to go over this today. I'm going to kind of talk briefly about what happened with Will and Jada's situation. I'm going to go over some things that happened in the past prior to the situation, which caused me to not be completely shocked when the news came out. And then I'm going to go over the 5 lessons that you can learn from this incident. Now, like I said, this show is interactive. There's a chat stream over here. So if you have anything you want to add to the conversation, or if you have any questions that you want to ask about anything we're talking about, then you can leave that over in the chat stream as well, okay? So for those of you that are not aware or who are living under a rock or don't follow this stuff like I do, this is basically the breakdown. So there was a R&B singer by the name of August Alsina, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, who recently came out and said that a few years back, him and Jada Pinkett Smith, who is married to Will Smith, had a relationship. They were hooking up together. They were intimate. They were partners. He called it a relationship. And so he's on this tour now trying to promote an album. And so he's been talking about this because he had, I guess, a couple of songs on one of his previous albums that kind of alluded to their relationship. And of course, you know, camps are trying to deny that, but he was on these shows with with stories and proof and pictures and all kinds of things, to where the Smiths couldn't really just not say anything. So sometime like a week or two ago, Jada put out that she was going to come to her talk show, the Red Table Talk, for a healing moment. The healing moment. And so that show came out, and on the show, she and Will Smith sat down across from each other while Jada told her story. So the basic version of the story is that I guess August was a friend of Jaden Smith's, their son, and when he came around them at the time, he was very sick. He wasn't doing well. She didn't specifically say what the sickness was, but she says that he was sick and that she thought she could be of help to him. And that was around the same time that her and Will were kind of on the outs. Like Will was saying at that point, by that point, he was just done with her for whatever reason. They were going through a lot of relationship turmoil. And as a result of that, they just weren't seeing eye to eye. And he was like, you go over there and do you. I'm going to come over here and do me. And in the process of that happening, she ended up in an entanglement with August, who is younger. And she's like close to 50. And that wouldn't even be discussed on this show, but just suffice to say, if it were the reverse where it was a man trying to lull a young girl like that, there'd be a bigger conversation that would be had in the media. But anyway, so they got into an entanglement, and Will, to his credit, made her clarify, no, it was a relationship. You guys got into a relationship. You guys were hooking up. You guys were doing things together for that time. And so that happened. I guess they were hooking up for a while. And then August decided to leave. And Jada realized at that point that, she has to work on herself, and she and Will need to work it out. And they were able to work it out. So that is the very succinct version of that story. And during the broadcast of it, it was interesting having Will there because I'm looking at his face. Like I'm like, there's going to be a moment where he makes a face that lets you know, even though he agreed to this sit down and they're looking like they're cordial and having a good time together, that she is mad. She is mad. Or he is mad about it. And there was that point where, you see the meme where his face is kind of like sunk or whatever. And you could see that he was kind of upset about that. And, there's been rumors about their relationship for years about it possibly being an open relationship, and possibly they've been letting other people into their marriage. And so I don't typically like to err on the side of rumor, because a lot of people think a lot of things that end up being inaccurate. There's tons of stories in the media of, this woman said this guy was cheating on her or doing these things, and then that's not the case. Or even the case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, where this whole time she was going on a rant about how he was abusing her and this and that, but then actual evidence comes out, well, she was actually abusing him. So I try to stay away from the rumor side of things. But in this case, on Jada's side of things, there was stories, there was evidence, there was pictures, and then obviously she came forward with her confession about this stuff. And so even though Will said they dealt with it 4 years ago, the reality is that this is probably clearly still a thing that is bothering him. Whether or not they have that open relationship agreement, it's more of a thing of like the fact that this became public. And now he has to be the face of the guy that got cheated on by this woman who up to this point, we were not aware this was a thing that was actually happening. Something that we rumored and thought might be happening. But now this comes out and it shows that it is happening. So that's the gist of the story. So I wanted to kind of break down first the history of that, because I do think within the history of their actual story, there are things that as an introvert, you need to be mindful of. So the first thing is that this story for a lot of people is like maybe the first time they've really paid attention to Will and Jada's situation. Okay. But I've been looking at various interviews, various ways that they interact with people for like years now. And so there were some things that Jada said during the thing that, if I'm looking back at their history, makes sense. So there was, there's a point where she said like, I was just very, very unhappy. I was unhappy. She didn't really specify that. And that'll be one of the things I actually talk about later about lessons to learn from this. But in part of that unhappiness, obviously her own past is things she has to deal with. But there's been times I've seen over the years whereby, even though Will on the public front is a very, very nice guy, and I think that he genuinely has a care in his heart and a desire to do good, there have definitely been times where he has spoken out of pocket to Jada in public, where he has said sarcastic comments that have gone on, that are either a bit too hard or have gone on for so long. And they'll have an interaction where it's like a 5-minute interaction where he's just like sarcastic jab after jab after jab after jab. And I don't know about you, but I know me, I don't personally like having my self-esteem attacked by way of my person that I'm dating throwing insults at me. Like, even if it's in a joking situation, if that's the thing that's consistently happening, that can legit start to tear down at your self-esteem. And so I could see how on some level, a portion of her being unhappy could be the result of that, because Will jokes around a lot. And there gets to a point where joking with somebody for 5 minutes is cool. Joking with somebody like that all day for 24 hours, minus sleep, every single day for a week, can start to go from they're being sarcastically funny to are they really feeling this way about me? Do they really see me in this negative light? What is that about, Looking on here, I'm looking at the chat now. It says, I don't like my self-esteem to be attacked either. Yeah, and I think I heard the saying one time. It said, sarcasm is the cousin of bitterness. And what that basically means is that, let's say you have a legit gripe with somebody. So you have a situation that somebody did something and you're mad at them. Well, people that aren't used to being able to communicate those things, and that's especially true for introverts because we typically stay to ourselves. And so if you don't have the practice of talking to people about your needs and desires on a regular basis, you could be with somebody and all of a sudden they do something and you don't know how to address it in a way that's going to be actually functional and work. So instead, you'll throw out a sarcastic jab like, oh, yeah, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. That's how you think about it or whatever. And you don't actually say, hey, that's actually bothersome. Stop that. And I was guilty of this. Like I was guilty of, I don't want to chase them away or hurt their feelings. So I'm going to just try to say something jokingly and hope they'll get it, or I'll do a jab back at them. And then that way they'll feel how like my jab will be the same form or intensity of hurt that there was to me, and they'll stop it. And that never works out because people aren't my readers. People don't get it. But if you're not attuned to being able to express yourself in that way, then that can cause problems, and that can cause situations where you just get more hurt until you're not happy with the person you're with, but you never expressed to them that those things were actually bugging you. So, I'd say on Will's end of stuff, he probably needed to be better at not being so sarcastic all the time. And that also reflects on him and his inability to really say what's on his mind. And then for Jada to kind of just sit there and take it, not that he should have been doing it, but if she wasn't speaking up and saying, hey, that's not necessary, then he's going to assume that what he's doing is okay. And she's just getting unhappier and unhappier and unhappier. And that's not a good thing. So just that's just what I've observed over the years with them in terms of, them doing interviews on various shows and, red carpets and stuff, that like when I see that, I'm just like, I always have this thing my mom taught me where she said, however people are in public, they're probably more of that in the background. So if he and she are having these little sarcastic jabs back and forth at each other all the time in public, you can guarantee that the public version of that is a lot tamer than the at home, just them two together version, where it goes from being sarcastic to being fights to being like not talking to each other to having a separation where they need time apart to figure out each other. So there is that part. Let's check the chat real quick here. Communication, G. Hill says communication is key. I suppose is key. It really is. And it takes both parties really trying to figure out what their best communication style is. Because some people are very much like, just tell me what it is and we'll get it done. And some people need a little bit more ice cream when you're telling them stuff, because telling it that directly can make them feel like they're being completely attacked. And knowing that doesn't mean that you don't ever come at that person, but it means that there's a different way of doing that. And there are tons of books out there that teach about communication. I've read psychology books, I've read communication books, all because I want people to know how I best communicate. A great book is The 5 Love Languages, which that'll be its own show, because I think that book everybody should read, but especially introverts, because if you're trying to find a shortcut way to get to know people, that book will definitely help you out. But yeah, people got to learn how to communicate. And I think people's egos make them believe that I already know how to communicate, so they're the problem. And I think that hits at us in a special way because we don't want to think that we could actually be at fault for something. But you have to legit do the work and say, you know what, even though I think I'm communicating good, I could always do better. So let me just see what other versions are out there, because ultimately, the better communicator you are, it's going to be helpful, not just for your interpersonal relationship, but also relationships with your friends, with your colleagues, with your coworkers, with potential people you work with. Like, that is such a vital thing, to be able to read the cues of people when, they get upset about something. Or let's say you're on a date and you're talking a lot and the girl's just kind of looking at you like, and you're not recognizing the look in her eyes that says, please shut up and stop talking. Please ask me a question. Please, please, please stop trying to hear yourself for 10 minutes and let me interject. Like, you need to be able to read those kind of things. And luckily, as an introvert, you like doing research and analyzing things. So that's another thing to add to your repertoire, is learning how to communicate better. And you'll find, too, that if you're able to communicate better, you'll be less nervous and anxious when you go out into the world to communicate. Like, I know as an introvert, I don't like going to parties all that much, but I know when I go to one, how to keep a conversation going, because I've had practice at it and I've read up on it. And it just becomes part of you, to where you're not so nervous about that when it happens. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, so that was the part I noticed about Will and Jada's communication in the public eye. But I kind of want to go over more like the lessons you need to learn from this incident in particular, because I think that, what's interesting to me is that Jada is actually an introvert. Like, you might not know that, but I've seen it expressed just in different stories and ways in the media, to where, I think people have this misinterpretation that, for example, she has a show and she's always inviting people on. And she's always talking to them. So people assume if you're an introvert that can talk to people, you must not be an introvert. But that's not really what introvertism is about, as you know. So, but yeah, she's definitely an introvert. And so based on that, I think there were things that she was unaware of that she needed or that she was doing that could actually cause all this to happen in the first place. And so I kind of want to get into that. So we'll go ahead and jump into that because that's what's up. But before I do jump into it, as always, if you want to hear more of these podcasts, you can go to protestparty.tv every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and see this show live. You can also go to introvertdatingsuccess.com to catch replays of this video. You can go there to download other podcasts. I've done like 90-something shows at this point, so there's a lot of stuff to listen to. You can also go to the website to check out the free first chapter of one of my eBooks, which is called No Girls For You, The Ultimate Guide to Losing the Girl of Your Dreams. This is actually a book that teaches you how to lose women in the right way, and it kind of highlights to you why all the reasons you're probably losing women right now all the reasons that you're trying to get women right now are the reasons you're actually losing them. Things like being a nice guy, things like complimenting them all the time, things like not talking about sex, believe it or not. And so you can read the first chapter of that for free at the website. It's a chapter about being a nice guy, simply by going there, filling out your email address, and then you'll get it like right away. So be sure to check that out. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I do that as well. You can go to the website and click on the coaching tab, and we can set something up for you today. Lastly, these shows are all about you and your needs. So if you have anything that you want me to talk about on this show, you can write to me at HarryWilmington@gmail.com. You can also go to the website and click on the contact tab. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. So these are the lessons that you can learn from Jada and Will's entanglement situation, all right? Lesson number one, this is very, very important, is that you must study a person's behavior at the beginning of a relationship, because those same actions could be the way they are towards you later. Now, I say this because even though this is a shock to a lot of people that, oh my gosh, how could Jada step out of the relationship if it was even a stepping out? Because again, we don't know what their actual arrangement was. But we'll assume this was a step out because again, Will did not look all that happy on the show. But assuming it was a step out, Jada herself has expressed, actually on the first episode of the Red Table Talk, she had Will Smith's ex-wife on the show. And it was there that she pointed out that she started dating Will while he was still technically married to his ex-wife. I think they were going through the divorce process, but at the time, he was still technically married. So, and there is fault on his part to blame for this for allowing this to happen, but the fact is she knew he was married and she still willingly went into that relationship and messed with him while he was still married. And so I don't know if Will didn't think that that would ever be a possible thing that she would do again, but clearly in this situation, it has happened again, whereby she felt completely comfortable going out of the relationship for her own pleasure. And this isn't the first time that there's been rumor of this happening with her. I know there was a few years ago on the show Hawthorne where she allegedly hooked up with one of her co-stars. Now, again, because that's rumor, I don't want to harp on that too much. But, you know, in her past, she's dealt with a wide variety of other people. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with a woman like having been with multiple guys. But it really is a problem when it comes to what was the context of that? Was she in other relationships when these things were happening? Like when she was dating, when she was, you know, with Tupac as just friends, were they messing around or not? And then were there other guys in the picture in the process of that happening? Were there other guys that she was seeing while she was also seeing Will at the time? Like, we don't know. But again, just the beginning of their relationship was she started dating him while he was with somebody. So as an introvert, part of doing your due diligence is looking at the things that a person is doing and seeing if those things are things that you could deal with later. You know, whether it's something as serious as her messing with somebody else while they're still in another relationship, or whether it's, you know, being rude to servers, or, you know, talking about the ways that she jokingly abused ex-boyfriends, because, you know, guys get abused too. And so you have to really look at these things because it's going to be important. I just saw in the chat, it says, somebody said that's too complex to analyze. Well, admittedly, especially for an introvert's brain, it's a lot of work because, you know, we tend to overanalyze and it can get tiresome. But I always say it's better in the beginning to be analyzing these things than to miss out on them. And then years later, you realize it's there. And now you got to go through a divorce. You got to go through possible kid separation. You got to go through money situations. You got to go through child support situations. And for me, the analyzation is worth it. Like, it's worth me taking the time in the beginning when I don't have such strong ties to the person to really see what is going on, what they're about, what they're bringing to the table, what kind of red flags are out there. So that way I won't have to deal with them later. Because for example, if you deal with a girl that like yells at a waiter over, you just got my steak wrong, I'm going to yell at you and whatever. She's going to yell at you at some point when you make a mistake. And I've experienced this. There was this girl that I dated one time, and it was cool. Like, she was really pretty and attractive, and we got along great. But like, there would be times where she would, when she'd be telling me stories about friends of hers, and she'd be like, yeah, so this person, they did this, but they think they're so cute and blah blah blah, and they take little jabs at their friends, and I'd be like, that's interesting. Like, they're taking some hard jabs at their friends, and not that people don't do that, because I mean, we definitely talk about people at times where it's like, oh, this person did this thing or whatever, but she'd be really hard pressed to like take jabs at them. And then fast forward to, there was a time where we were about to hook up. And she was about to go out of town. So I went over to her place so we could like hook up before she went out of town. And so her bed was stacked up on these blocks because she wanted to have her bed higher up. Well, in the throes of passion, I had forgotten about that. So as I'm attempting to try to like, the time prior when I'd been over there, we had done some stuff, and like her bed frame kept banging against the wall. So I didn't want that to happen this time. So I figured, okay, if I can move the bed away from the wall, then it won't do that. So in the process of trying to move the bed, I forgot that, oh crap, they're on these stands. So when I pulled the bed started to fall off of the little blocks. So the end result of that is like, it took all of like a minute and a half to get the bed back on the blocks. And I mostly did it myself just by like reaching up and whatever. But what happened was, as the bed falls, she's like, oh my God, Harry, what are you doing? And I'm like, my bad, I forgot. She's like, oh, you just had to go and Harry this up. And I was just like, hey, why am I a verb now? And also like, this isn't a necessary jab. Like, this is a situation where we could just put the bed up on the thing, it'd be over, we can get to our good time. And so at that point, I was just instantly like turned off. Like, I was like, she's not going to talk to me this way. This is a wrap. We still hooked up because I was already over there. But the point is, after that, I was like, this isn't going to work out. Like, I'm sorry. Like, just the way you come at me with these very sarcastic jokes, like we talked about this before, but, and I brought up in the past, and I was like, okay, this should get it. And it didn't. I'm like, I'm not going to deal with this long term. Like, I don't think I need to be dealing with this kind of treatment from somebody. And at this point, this chick was like 39. So I knew at this point, by the time people reach 25, they are how they are. And it's very hard to change somebody at that point. So I'm not in the habit of trying to change somebody. So I was just like, I'm out. Like, it's a wrap, because that behavior is only going to get worse, especially if I allow it to keep happening. So again, be very mindful of people's behavior early on, because if it's something you think you can deal with, then keep on going. But if not, get the heck out of there. So that's the first thing you can learn from this little entanglement, is that how people are in the beginning, people don't change all that much. So be mindful of the behavior that you're accepting and not accepting. The second lesson to learn from Jada and Will's entanglement is your damage must be worked on in order to be the best possible person for someone. Otherwise, it affects how you deal with situations when they arise. Yeah. So during the whole show, Jada kept saying like, yeah, like I was hurt and I realized like I was damaged and I was trying to do my own healing, and that's all great, but that now affects Will. And your actions for how to deal with your trauma is now affecting this other person who has their own trauma and needs to deal with it also. But you're bringing situations to the table that are publicly embarrassing and could be a detriment to your relationship. So, I understand, especially with women, they go through a lot. There's like, man, they go through possible abuse. They go through possible abandonment as a result of like if their dads left them or their parents left them, the various sexual things that they go through that are just horrific. And so, yeah, you might come across a girl that is damaged, or you yourself as a guy who's as an introvert might also be damaged from various things that if you bring them to the table and they're not fixed, you're going to also affect it in a negative way. But it's your job to make sure that if you're able to recognize the damage you have, get that shit fixed. Like, I don't care if you got to go to therapy. I don't care if you got to talk to your homeboys about it, or really like go someplace to solitude, which as an introvert, you're going to mostly be in solitude anyway, and just sit with yourself and really figure this stuff out, or watch YouTube videos on how to handle these things that you've dealt with. But you have to do the work, because the only way you're going to be good for somebody else and be able to have a long-term healthy relationship is if you're able to get that stuff fixed. Now, I know me, my dad died when I was 9 years old. And so I don't think I had any abandonment issues, but I definitely had the fear of like, I don't want to get too close to somebody because, God forbid, they die or go away. They might leave me. And so I'd get into situations with women that I knew at some point were going to leave. Or that once I got into a situation where I was with them and they actually wanted to stay, I would start self-sabotaging and doing things that would make them go away. And then be like, oh my God, I can't believe they left me. But subconsciously, that's what I was kind of doing, was doing things to make them leave. And so once I was able to recognize that, I had to get to the part where I was like, okay, like if girls are liking you, that's cool. They should. If they want to stay around, you need to find women that are going to be staying around, because if you want a long-term relationship, then that's what you got to do. And again, recognizing that part of that is setting aside your ego and recognizing the work that needs to be done. And that's why I got a website that's got a bunch of books on how to either rethink about things in certain ways or to help you better yourself in certain situations, because I don't think any of us start out really knowing all that well what to do in relationships. I think women have a better jump on it because they've been taught since age 2, like they've just been pushed, have a relationship, have a relationship, have a relationship. For us guys, not so much. So we're typically later in the game, but that does not give you an excuse to not learn what you can do to fix yourself to be better for somebody else. So that's the second thing. The third thing you need to learn about this is that you cannot base your happiness on the other person. And this is a problem that I think a lot of people have in situations, is that they assume that if their life isn't going that well, or they're, upset or whatever, they figure, well, my partner is supposed to make me happy. It's my partner's job. If I get into a relationship, I'm gonna be happy. If I get married, I'm gonna be happy. If I have a kid and I have a family, we're gonna be happy. That's all I need to be happy, is just these other situations. And you have to come to a relationship already happy with who you are. Because if you don't, then what you're going to find is you're going to stress the other person out. Because every time that they say something you don't like, or they want to do some kind of action that you don't like, it's going to be upset. Oh my God, you're just doing this to make me upset. How dare you? I remember I dated this girl one time, and I mean, like within 6 months of us dating each other, I had expressed before that I was an introvert, very much so. And so we were just having what I consider a regular phone conversation one day. And I was just talking to her, and she was asking me about the whole introvert thing and needing alone time. And I was telling her, I was like, yeah, like, as introverts, we typically tend to recharge our energy by being alone. So I said, so sometimes, I might be here at the apartment by myself, not just watching TV or doing whatever, or I might decide to like take a day trip somewhere just to might go to San Diego, might go to Palm Springs, might go to a hotel in town somewhere just to kind of relax to myself. And she was like, well, what? Like, you would go out of town by yourself? And I was like, yeah, like, it's my alone time. I can technically have alone time wherever I want. And she was really hurt about the fact that I would actually go out of town and not try to take her. And it really is like a thing where she was just like why would you do that? Like, does it mean you don't like me? Does it mean what? And so I realized, so I'm not with that person anymore, but I realized later on, like, she had a lot of friends of hers in the past that were friends with her, and then they'd like go away, and then she'd kind of be by herself. And I think she was probably a little bit more on the extroverted side, but she couldn't keep friends around. So she couldn't so to her, it felt like if I was saying I would go someplace without her, that I just didn't want her around. And she was basing how she felt about that based on how I felt about that. And I'm like, I can go out of town, have alone time, be good, and then come back and see you and also be good. Like, those two things, I can be happy in both situations, but I'm not going to have a bad time just because you're not there. Like, my good time out of town solo is not based on whether or not you're there or not. And so, yeah, you have to really get into this place where you know how to create your own happiness or your own opportunities for happiness. You have your own interests. You have your own friends you talk to. You have your own things outside of that other person. Because what if that other person doesn't want to do what you want to do? What if you want to go to, say, like a happy hour and they don't drink? Oh my God, you must not like me because, you want to go to this happy hour with me, and I'm so distraught now. Like, that's not the way it should work, because both people are going to come to this relationship as a whole person. And they're going to come with their own interests. And you can't rely on what they're doing to determine how you feel about stuff. And, there's obviously, that's a generality, because there are caveats of things like, if the other person feels inclined to like hit things with bats and they want to hit you with a bat, then obviously that affects you now. But outside of that, those kind of things, like, we can use our brains to recognize that, what makes them happy and what makes you happy can sometimes not intertwine at all. And that's good. Okay. If anything, especially as an introvert, you should be of the idea that you are more than happy for the other person to do their thing, and you can be happy for them while you're over here doing your own thing. Which leads to point number 4. And this is very important. This particularly is true of Will and Jada's situation, okay? Is that you cannot try to change an extrovert into an introvert. And I say this because, I've been studying their relationship thing for a while now. And there was a video one time where Will said, there's a point where Jada and them got into a situation where they really weren't doing that well. And that he told her, hey, you got to do you, and I'm going to do me. And that he had to go off on his own and do some other stuff. But I think what I recognized was he said, Jada really likes to, stay at home and kind of like be a homebody. And I like to go out and do stuff. I like to travel around the world. I like to do movies. I like to go out and experience new things. I'm not going to be that guy that's always at home. So I think part of Jada's unhappiness was, as an introvert, she was thinking, well, I'm an introvert, and so he should want to stay home with me. And I know for some of you that might sound weird, because there are some introverts out there that, even though they like their alone time, typically as introverts, we like our alone time, but the caveat is that we are also very comfortable around people that we know. And when we get to know people, we can spend hours on end with them. So in the case of a relationship, what can happen is you as an introvert meet a woman and you really, really like her. And so you're trying to talk to her all the time. You're trying to be around her all the time. And once you get that comfortability, you could be around her all day, and it still feels like you need your alone time, but she's the exception. Whereby if she's in the room, you could still be there doing your thing, but her being there just makes it all better. Okay. But the problem is, let's say you're dating an extrovert who wants to go out. So you're at home and you're thinking, I'm going to have a Netflix and chill night with my boo. And then she's like, I'm going to go hang out with the girls tonight at Jane's house or whatever. And now you're thinking you're butthurt. And you're like, well, no, you should want to stay here. You shouldn't want to go hang out with 10 or 12 other people. You shouldn't want to go to a bar and party. You shouldn't want to go to an event where I'm not going to be there. Like, I want to stay here and just chill. Why can't you do that? And that's the thing, is that just like you don't want an extrovert to change you into somebody who has to go out all the time and has to travel nonstop, you can't try to curtail them and say, you need to stay inside all the time. You need to have self-reflection. You need to just stay here and think and be with me and do whatever, because now you're changing them into a different person. And what most people don't realize is that you fell in love with this person for a particular reason. But what a lot of people will do is they'll start trying to nitpick at things and change people into a different person, but you end up changing them into a person that you're not actually attracted to, because what attracted them to you in part was that they had these various things that were different from you, or that they maybe were a little bit extroverted. I know me, when I date extroverted people, I think it's great. Because it gets me out a little bit more into situations I might not have done, but I'm also very respectful of that. They know how to communicate with people. They know how to get me into conversations with people. It's awesome. And at the same time, I'm an introvert. So I'm not going to be like, if they say like, hey, I'm going to go out to this bar, blah, 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 do you want to go? I'm not going to say, well, I want to stay home and you got to stay home too. For one, I want my alone time, and that gives me a reason to have it. And also, that now causes them to have resentment towards me, because I knew going in they were an extrovert. So why would I try to change that into like, oh, well, now you got to stay here. And I knew who you were in the beginning, but you need to change for me, and that's going to be the best way. And that can cause a lot of hurt feelings and resentment. So I think part of Jada's unhappiness was she was trying to change Will into an introvert. She wanted him to stay home. She wanted him to be around all the time. And that's just not Will. Like, Will likes being famous. Will likes being around different people. Will started a whole YouTube channel and a TikTok channel and a Snapchat channel specifically to connect with more and more people. Jada's got one show, because that's all she can handle in her introvert mind, is that she can only do this one thing at a time. And then after that show, she's probably drained for the rest of the day and wants to go sit down and do whatever. So yeah, I think that was a major issue that she was not aware of. And had she been more aware of that, and I think this thing too, I think people should really analyze how they are. They should do the whole test you can do online about if you're an introvert or an extrovert and what kind you are, and then let people know that about you. Because especially if it's an introvert that's dating an extrovert, then they really need to have those conversations about, okay, so what does this mean? So as an extrovert, does this mean that you're going to want to go out sometime? And do I have to be cool with that? Does this mean that you're going to be trying to get me to go to things all the time when I don't want to? Like, we need to be able to sit down, talk about who we are, how we are, and then understand that just because I'm this way is not an insult to you. It just means this is what I need. So as an introvert, for example, I've told girls that I date one, I managed to slide in there. I am an introvert. I slide in. I need my alone time. I slide in there. Hey, you know what? If you do your own thing, I'm never going to be that guy that's going to be like, oh my God, you got to stay here. Like, I believe you legit need to be able to do your thing, and I'm not going to impede upon that, but I also need to be able to have time to do my thing. And that makes it a lot better going forward to when situations arise where, like, I want to stay home, that the person's not completely shocked by it, or even if there's a little bit of pushback, it's not going to be this gargantuan fight where they don't understand what's going on, because I explained to them I'm an introvert. And so, yeah, but in the same token, if I come across somebody that's an extrovert, I'm going to know that and not be the guy that's like, stay home, cuddle up with me, be quiet. Like, it's just, you gotta be able to let the person free. If you don't let people be who they are, they're going to resent you. And I think a lot of times we try to have a hold on another person thinking that if I just hold them to how I want them to be, then if they really love me, they'll be this way. And it's like, no, the best show of love is you let them do their own thing and they come back to you. And if they come back and they still want to be around you, then they care about you, and they care about you more because you allowed them to be free and you trusted them and they came back. So yeah, so that's point number 4. And then point number 5 that you should learn from Jada and Will's Entanglement, very, very important, is you at home sitting here watching this, never ever base your relationship or how your relationship should be on other couples, because you truly do not know what other couples are going through, okay? And I say this because there's a lot of celebrities out there for years people have been clamoring over, Jay-Z and Beyonce, Will and Jada, plethora of others that I can't think of right now. And you might be sitting there single right now thinking like, man, I wish I had, a perfect relationship like these people, or man, that guy's just really got it right with his wife and they got a family and kids and they're always taking pictures on Instagram and looking all happy and stuff. And I wish I had that. And why can't I find a woman like that? Or why can't I be with somebody that's just like that? And then you find out years later, oh, wait, Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce. Oh, wait, Jada cheated on Will. Or we'll say cheated for this show, even though we don't, rumors and stuff. Okay, we're not going with that. But the point is, so you're now seeing these things come to light where it's like, oh, wow, I didn't even know they were having problems. They never looked unhappy in the media. They never looked like they were going through any kind of situation. There's a lot of couples that are divorcing, and I'm going to do a whole show on that too, about couples that have been divorcing during this quarantine and stuff. But like, these are couples that were married for 15 to 20 years, and everybody thought they were so great. No, they look so cute together, and their story of how they got together and bonded or whatever, I want to have that too. And you find out that they were having problems too. And I stress this to you because as an introvert, if you're single, you're probably sitting at home doing a lot of self-analyzation and a lot of research. And a lot of that research could be going online, looking up people that have relationships and trying to get with them and figuring out what it is that they did to get with somebody. And you're thinking that that's the way to do it. But you're not seeing the behind the scenes mechanics. You're not seeing, especially in Hollywood, I'm sure there's plenty of deals out there where it's like, okay, well, even though we hate each other's guts, we're going to stay together for the culture or for the public, or, we're going to smile in front of the camera. We ain't going to sleep with each other when we go home. We're going to smile in front of the camera and say everything's great. And you just never know. You really, truly never know. So when you're, trying to find a woman and you find somebody that's desirable and they want to, connect with you or whatever, if you're not connecting in a way that you thought you should based on how somebody else you saw out there, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's other close personal friends of yours that are relationships are connecting, understand that you need to find what works for you. And I'm looking in the chat now. It says you got to communicate for sure. You got to communicate your wants and needs in a relationship, be open and honest. Yeah, like it's all about really communicating, and it's about not just like communicating like I'm going to tell you this and you tell me that. It's about really like active listening. It's about really being in a situation where you're willing to hear the other person, meet them where they're at, figure out what compromise needs to be made, if at all, and then go about figuring out, okay, what do I bring to the table? What do you bring? What's going to make you happy that's separate from me? And what makes me happy that's separate of you? And how can we make that work? Because you trying to emulate these relationships, well, you don't know what those relationships are actually happening like, and you don't know what they actually did. You're seeing on the front end what I call the facade. You're seeing the facade of how their relationship is working based on pictures and video that they've put out there. And they're only putting out there a microcosm of what their whole relationship is. So they put out a picture or video that's like 5 minutes. Well, there's 24 hours in a day. So of the 5 minutes, you saw the 5 minutes of happiness, and then there could be another 23 hours and 55 minutes of not getting along, of bickering and fighting and cheating and all these other things that you are not aware of, okay? So be mindful of that, okay? Now, there are sources out there that you can study to have a better probability of your relationship working out. And you can find some of that stuff at introvertdatingsuccess.com. I got books on how to do better texting. I got books on how to win back your ex-girlfriend, regardless of who entered the relationship. I got a whole book that's dedicated to teaching you what not to do when you're trying to date. And all these things are meant to be sources to help you get a better grip on the reality of how a relationship can be and is. If you don't go into the dating world with a realistic lens of how dating should actually be, you're going to be grossly disappointed when it doesn't come out your way. And again, I used to be the same way. I used to think like, oh, I'd put girls on these high pedestals like, oh, they're so perfect and they would never do anything wrong. And if something goes wrong, it must be my fault. And you kind of find out like, oh no, everybody screwed up a little bit. I'm screwed up sometimes. They're screwed up sometimes. Sometimes things happen where it is legit my fault. Sometimes things happen where they are fully at fault. Sometimes there's a level of that's shared. But if you go in thinking a certain angle of it and thinking things need to be perfect or that your relationship needs to look like this, then that's not going to happen for you. The more realistic you are about how relationships function, you're going to actually have a better grasp of that, and you're going to be less anxious. You're going to be more apt to do more of the right things. And then when certain things come along, you'll be able to fix those things, or at least compromise to a level that allows the relationship to continue to happen. So those are the lessons. Just briefly, we'll go through those again. So the lessons to learn from Jada and Will's entanglement is this. Number one, you must study a person's behavior at the beginning of a relationship, because those same actions could be the way that they are towards you later, and you want to make sure that you're looking out for that at all times. Number two, your damage must be worked on. I cannot stress this enough. Do not bring your damage to somebody else, because your lens of what's happening in a relationship is going to be skewed based on your damage if you have not fixed it. Number three, you cannot base your happiness on the other person. The other person should be an addition to your happiness, but they should not be the primary reason for your happiness. Number four, you cannot try to change an extrovert into an introvert. For those introverts that are out there dating extroverts or attracted to extroverted people, they have a lot of pluses that they can bring to a relationship. So the last thing you want to do is cut that off, and then you're not making them happy, you're not happy, and then it blows up in your face anyway. And then number five, never ever base your relationship on never base how your relationship should be on other couples, because you truly do not know what is going on behind the scenes of all these relationships that you want to copy. If you follow these 5 steps, this is just the start of, these are just a few of the lessons you can learn. There's a whole bunch of other things you can learn from watching that. I was just fascinated. I watched all 12 minutes of it twice, just sitting there thinking like, they're actually doing this. And even within that, there were little things here and there, like when Will's like, I need to get back at you for this. And Jada was like, well, you already kind of got back at me, ha, ha, ha. It's like, there's those little sarcastic things, like you're trying to push it off like you're cool now, but it's like you're not really delving into like, no, this really hurt me, or like, no, you did this thing back to me and I didn't like that either, but I understood why you did it. But whatever, like that's just the way they are with each other. It always looks like a facade to me. Jada's face always looks like she's ready to get out of a relationship, and Will always kind of looks like, I want to go anywhere else, but they're already in it. Will's already had a divorce, so I don't think he's trying to do one again, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do get divorced. But the point is like, yeah, so don't base your situation on anybody's situation, because all those situations, you can find out 10, 15 years later, they weren't happy the whole time. Or even people that are married like 30, 40 years, you're thinking like, man, I want to figure out how to do that. And then you find out, well, he had a mistress on the side that was pleasing him more than the wife, so that's how they kept it together. Like, you don't know, but it could be. So just be mindful of that, okay? Thank you for tuning into today's show. For more of these shows, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other place where podcasts can be found. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments below about this episode, as well as what you'd like me to discuss in future episodes. You can also write me with your questions and suggestions at HarryWilmington@gmail.com. Guys, this show is now actually a live show, so if you want to join us on the chat stream, make sure to catch the show live at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at protestparty.tv. In the meantime, if you like my work and you want to show some support, you can go to the website and click on the tip jar tab. You can also go there to check out my 3 eBooks, No Girls For You, Texting Like a Boss, and 10 Steps to Winning Back Your Ex. Lastly, if you're having trouble in your dating life and would like my personal help, go to the website, click on the coaching tab, and we can schedule a coaching session. That's all for now. I'm Harry Wilmington, and I'll catch you all on the next show. I'm out. Peace.